Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to discuss whether anxiety is contagious. Newt. So we got a question here from a listener. Thank you guys for these. Animus at animusempire.com if you have a question, or reach out on Twitter. DM me, as they say. This listener has a question about whether you can catch somebody's anxiety. When he was in college, he had a roommate, and this roommate showed signs of anxiety, though this listener didn't know they were signs of anxiety at the time. So the roommate would always walk around, covered in a blanket, wrapped in a blanket, very much like those storm shirts they have for dogs, the tight-fitting storm shirts that help a dog feel more secure. The roommate would always have the television on. He would sleep on the couch. Now, this listener did not recognize these as signs of anxiety at the time. But this is when the listener became more and more anxious. So he's wondering, even though he wasn't conscious of this anxiety, did he catch his roommate's anxiety? Oh, and this leads, of course, into the question of, is it possible to catch somebody's anxiety? My answer to this is yes. We can definitely catch people's anxiety. And if we're going to carry the analogy over, the pathogen analogy for anxiety, and you can catch somebody's anxiety, you can also immunize yourself from anxiety as well. So let's say a little bit more about this and how it works. So what you're talking about here is the social contagion theory of anxiety. So you don't have to be exposed to the to the threat that causes anxiety to feel anxious yourself. You can catch it from somebody else. I think a common example of this, let's say your spouse is, you're sitting in your home, everything seems all right, the kid's okay, the dog's okay, the house doesn't seem like it's on fire, and your spouse comes in and she has this worried look on her face. And now you are going to be worried because she has a worried look. It depends how often she comes in with a worried look. If it's all the time, maybe not, you're going to tune it out. But let's say she comes in and worried look, you're going to feel worried even though you are not exposed at all to the threat that caused her worry. And it's a very subtle cues that we pick up on, and that's what makes it unconscious. Because, if your eyebrow, for example, if your eyebrow's at 35 degrees, then it's worry, and now you get worried if her eyebrow's at 37.5 degrees, okay, that's excitement, and you're not worried. Now, you're not picking up, or you can't explicate exactly what's going on. We have nerdy researchers that do this, and this is cross-cultural, how, the archetypal expression of certain emotions is cross-cultural. So you're not picking up on it, right? You're not getting a protractor out and measuring her eyebrow angle. You can just sense it. And that's what makes it unconscious. Another example of this, I think it's pretty similar, is let's say you're at a dinner party and you're talking to some guy and you just feel skeezed out by him, like you feel creeped out. And you don't know exactly why at the time during the party, but afterwards you can go back and become more conscious of those cues that were unconscious. Oh yeah, he was doing that or that. He kept, fiddling with his drink or something, and that was kind of weird. It felt like he just wanted to get out of there, like he was on the verge of a panic attack, something to that effect. So we're not conscious of these things at the time. We kind of are, right? Consciousness, unconsciousness, regarding our perception, there's a gray area there. Some stuff they're kind of conscious of, it's just outside the realm of our consciousness. So we are aware of it to some degree. And this also, works on an intellectual level too. This is something Jung talks about, cryptomnesia. So Nietzsche was accused of plagiarizing a story that came out in the 1830s or something. And parts of the story are word for word, looks like a plagiarization. But Jung's point is, no, Nietzsche didn't plagiarize the story. This is a story that he read or was exposed to when he was young, which was confirmed by Nietzsche's sister, that Nietzsche did read the story when he was young. And he forgot about it, and then later on in his adulthood, he spit back the story word for word in some parts. Now, it wasn't all word for word, but you can tell that Nietzsche put his own spin on it. You could tell it was Nietzsche's, even though parts of the story was word for word, and this is called cryptomnesia. I think it was also behind, you may not remember, but there's this comedian back in the aughts. His name was Dane Cook, and he was accused of stealing jokes from Louis C.K. And there's actually a really good scene in Louis C.K.'s show, Louis, before they kind of hash it out. And what Louis C.K. says is, look, Dane, I know you didn't steal my joke on purpose. Like, I know you're not that dumb. I know you're not that bad of a guy. But what probably happened is you were in the back room when I was out doing a set, and you heard it, right? You heard it just maybe outside of the range of your conscious perception at the time. You went home and you had this idea for this funny joke. You just had this idea all of a sudden, and you didn't care that it could have possibly come from somebody. And if you know something about comedians, something they talk about a lot is, hey, I have this funny joke. Does this come from anywhere? Did I pick this up on, some premium blend, Comedy Central special I saw in 1998? You're constantly asking yourself that. And Dane Cook was too obsessed with his own success at the time to really care. He's like, I don't care. I have this good joke, and it's going to be funny. He didn't have the ability to just go back and the calmness, to go back and say, well, wait, where did this come from? He did lack that reflective capacity. So it works on a intellectual level as well. We catch thoughts. This works on a biological level as well. Like, I was on the BART during Halloween. BART's the Bay Area Rapid Transit. It's the subway system here in the Bay Area. And I was on a crowded train. It was Halloween, and the girl, not next to me, but the girl next to the girl next to me, she puked. It was really gross. It smelled terrible. And of course, what happens when somebody in your proximity pukes is you start to feel nauseated. You start to feel like you really need to puke because, well, consciously you go, oh, well, it's gross, and her puking makes you want to puke. Well, no, there are other factors going on we can deduce, and that is, on some evolutionary level, if some girl in my proximity is puking, we're in the same tribe. So we're in the same tribe, we ate the same food. If she's puking, she ate something gross. Therefore, I probably ate something gross as well, the same thing, and I need to get ready to puke as well. It's a really helpful mechanism to have in a certain situation. If you're at that disgust, puke, nauseated mechanism, if you're at a seafood buffet in Reno, and you do the thing where as you're eating the oyster, like as soon as the tip of the oyster touches your tongue, you know something's wrong with it, but you eat it anyways because you're so cheap. Yeah, I'm gonna need that nauseated puke reflex then. So thank you for existing, but in this moment, I'm aware of what's going on, and I'm able to go, okay, you don't need to puke. You just this very normal, healthy mechanism is coming up for you, and I think that's a good indication of how to immunize yourself from catching certain emotions or thoughts from people is awareness. Another great example of how awareness helps immunize ourselves from emotions is with children. So a study that I really like to cite, it's probably been debunked 35 times by now, but it's a good study, and it shows that moms who are afraid of dogs, I think the original study was with mice or rats, but moms who are afraid of dogs, the chance that their child is going to be afraid of a dog is nearly 100%. Now, it's not 100%, but nearly 100%. And the reason is because when a dog enters the room, the mom shows very subtle signs of anxiety. And so the child picks up on this and goes, well, if mom's afraid of it, then I better be afraid of it as well. And it's subtle. Because, the best part of the study is, okay, so the mom learns this. She knows it's an irrational fear. She knows it's irrational to be afraid of dogs. So she goes, okay, I don't want my child to be afraid of dogs, so what I'll do is I'm going to pretend like I'm not afraid next time I see a dog. And of course, it doesn't work. Now, clearly, right, the child is not picking up consciously on these signs of anxiety given off by the mom, but it is influencing the child, and this is exactly what we need to do to immunize ourselves from anxiety or any other emotion from somebody else. Is we need to be aware of this emotion in ourselves. Is that emotion differentiated in us? Are we aware of it? Do we have a solid identity? Right? I'm just saying the same thing in a different way. Are we conscious of this part of our unconscious, or have we been conscious of this part of our unconscious before? I kind of felt like puking when that girl next to me on the subway, when she puked. I kind of felt like puking. I didn't, because again, I knew what was going on. But other situations, I just don't have as much experience with my puke, disgusted, nauseated reflex to puke myself. But other situations where I do have more awareness, like with my anxiety. I've obviously worked on my anxiety way more than I've worked on my disgust reflex. But if somebody has a panic attack, I was on a flight, the lady next to me started to have a panic attack, and I actually became calmer. Not because I'm some superhero, but because I've been in that situation before. I mean, at that time in my life, I was working in a lot of group therapy, and people will just start to have panic attacks in group therapy. There's some other situation like that where, but in general, because I've managed my anxiety pretty well, obviously there's still more to do, but because I've really become literate with my anxiety, when somebody starts a panic, I actually become calmer because I know what they're feeling. I know what they're going through. This is not new to me, right? I have acclimated myself to the stress of that emotion, whether it's their emotion or whether it's my emotion. I've acclimated myself to the stress of that. This is what goes on, or this explains the process behind separation from our parents. The first stage of adult development that we talk about, can you separate emotionally from our parents? This is one of the mechanisms behind it. Let's say you're 15 and you start to resent your mom because she's anxious, your mom's anxious. You don't really know your mom's anxious. You're not going to put it in those words when you're 15. You're just, oh, mom's annoying and I don't like being around her and I'm frustrated by my mom and I resent her, and her anxiety makes her do strange things around people who makes company, and it's bad for my reputation. That's all I care about when I'm 15. But later you grow up and you realize, oh, my mom's an anxious person. And I was having that reaction to my mom because I was not aware of my own anxiety at the time. But whether I've gone to therapy or just lived life, through developing more honest relationships with other people, I have become more aware of my anxiety. So now when I hang out with my mom, she is not less anxious than she was when I was 15. Probably she's more anxious because she's getting old and she's not managing the anxiety, so maybe it's just getting worse and worse. She is not less anxious, but I am more regulated in my anxiety, so I'm able to separate it out. I am able to not let her anxiety affect me. I have a boundary for my mom and her anxiety. So she still has her anxiety, yet I am ever more calm around her. I am separated because I have managed that which caused her to be anxious. And that's even more relevant in the family context, because what's causing her to be anxious may be a family issue that you, of course, in turn, need to deal with. So, yeah. Do you have awareness of your anxiety is the main issue, and of course that's something that we can help you with here at Animus, something that we do. I mean, just to peel back the curtain a little bit, this isn't the entirety of emotional regulation, but I think it's a really important step, and maybe an important first step for some people, and that is simply, can you name an emotion? Can you name what you are feeling at the moment? Good, bad, okay, fine are not feelings. And people, I've noticed, have a lot of resistance to this, and are like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Oh, I'm too tired. Oh, I don't feel like talking about it. That is all resistance. That's fear. I know it doesn't seem like fear, but that is fear. That is a way for you to defend against emotions, because emotions are painful. They are a neurological load, especially unconscious emotions. They're a neurological load that you're not used to. That's simply pain. And you're trying to distract yourself. You're trying to defend yourself against feeling pain. Totally normal, right? And it's something that we can totally work through. But first we got to start naming emotions. And I really recommend that people do this with their spouse, wife, girlfriend, significant other, boyfriend, husband, whatever. Once a day, about at least 5 times a week, just name one emotion with them. Let them name an emotion to you. Relate with each other's emotions. It feels like pretty much nothing in the moment, and that's why it works, because it's something that you are able to do. But with each iteration in doing this, you get more and more comfortable feeling emotions. And then when you have a roommate or you're around anybody who's really anxious, you are able to pick up on it. Not only the external cues of anxiety, but how you feel the anxiety. But of course, awareness of both, awareness of your internal anxiety, your internal state is a reflection of how aware you will be of external cues, and vice versa. So, this is something that we can help you with here. We have a unique way of doing therapy. Emotions have a certain structure. Because they have a certain structure, we talk about them, we regulate them in a certain way. This creates a structure for therapy. So we can help you through a process so you can do what you want to do and stop doing things you don't want to do. Reach out. We do free consultations. animusempire.com/schedule. Thank you guys for listening. And remember, while you can definitely catch anxiety, while you can catch somebody else's anxiety, this may simply be another opportunity to become more aware of yourself.